The silence in courtroom 4B was deafening, the kind that usually precedes a life sentence, not a divorce decree. Nathaniel Sterling, the tech mogul of Seattle, leaned back in his leather chair and smirked. It was a subtle, arrogant curl of the lip that screamed victory. He thought he had buried his assets deep enough that the law couldn't touch them. He thought his wife, Audrey, was just a broken woman begging for scraps. He was wrong. In her trembling hand, she didn't hold a tissue. She held a document he had signed 3 years ago, a document he had completely forgotten. The smirk was about to cost him $50 million. The air in the Superior Court of Washington smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a scent Audrey Sterling had come to associate with the slow suffocation of her marriage. She sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, focusing on the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the back wall. It was November 14th, a Tuesday. It was supposed to be the day her life officially ended, or at least the life she had known for the past 12 years. Across the aisle, her husband, Nathaniel Sterling, looked as if he were attending a board meeting rather than the dissolution of his family. He wore a bespoke navy suit, the fabric Italian, cut to accentuate the broad shoulders that had once made Audrey feel safe. Now they just looked like a barricade. Beside him sat his attorney, Harrison Cole, a man whose reputation in Seattle was less legal counsel and more attack dog. Cole was currently shuffling papers with a theatrical flair, ensuring the diamond cufflinks on his wrists caught the overhead fluorescent lights. "Your Honor!" Cole's voice boomed, filling the small courtroom. "My client has been more than generous. The offer of alimony is consistent with his current reported income. Mrs. Sterling's insistence on these alleged hidden assets is nothing more than a fantasy born of bitterness. There is no money in the Cayman accounts. There is no shell company in Zurich. Mr. Sterling's tech startup, Nebula Stream, is currently operating at a loss." Audrey didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the judge, the Honorable Judge Prentice, a stern woman with wire-rimmed glasses who looked like she had little patience for theatrics. Nathaniel turned his head slightly. His eyes, a piercing, icy blue, locked onto Audrey's. And then it happened. The smirk. It wasn't a smile of warmth. It was the expression of a predator watching a wounded animal limp in circles. It was a smirk that said, "I won. You lose. You were always just a stepping stone." He leaned over to his lawyer, whispering something that made Cole chuckle softly. The disrespect was palpable. Nathaniel believed, with every fiber of his being, that Audrey was the same naive art history major he had swept off her feet in college. He thought she was the woman who simply nodded when he said he had to work late, the woman who signed whatever tax documents he put in front of her without reading the fine print. He thought she was stupid. "Mrs. Sterling?" Judge Prentice asked, her voice cutting through the tension. "Does your counsel have a response to Mr. Cole's statement regarding the financial affidavit?" Audrey's lawyer was a woman named Sarah Jenkins. Sarah wasn't flashy. She worked out of a strip mall in Tacoma and drove a 10-year-old Honda. Nathaniel had laughed when he saw who Audrey had hired. "That's the best you can do?" he had sneered during their deposition. Sarah stood up, adjusting her blazer. "We do, Your Honor. But before we address the affidavit, we would like to submit a piece of evidence that was previously overlooked by the defense during discovery." Harrison Cole rolled his eyes. "Objection. Discovery is closed, Your Honor. We can't just pull rabbits out of hats at the 11th hour." "It's not a rabbit, Your Honor," Sarah said calmly. "It's a notarized document signed by Mr. Sterling himself, dated August 12th, 2022. Nathaniel's brow furrowed. The smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. "August 2022. He racked his brain. That was 3 years ago, the year Nebula Stream went public, the year he had started seeing Sienna, his 24-year-old VP of marketing. He had signed thousands of documents that year. What could they possibly have? "I'll allow it, but make it quick," Judge Prentice ruled, waving her hand. Sarah walked toward the bench, handing a folder to the bailiff, then placed a copy on the defense table. Nathaniel snatched the paper before his lawyer could touch it. The courtroom went silent. Audrey watched her husband's face. She saw the moment his eyes scanned the header. She saw the blood drain from his cheeks, turning his tan skin a sickly shade of grey. She saw his throat bob as he swallowed hard. The smirk was gone. "What is this?" Harrison Cole hissed, leaning over Nathaniel's shoulder to read the paper. "It appears," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear and strong, "to be a declaration of trust regarding an entity known as Blackwood Holdings. In this document, Mr. Sterling explicitly acknowledges that he is the sole beneficiary of Blackwood, a company that currently holds the deed to a $20 million commercial property in downtown Seattle and, if I'm reading the bank statements attached correctly, approximately $12 million in liquid cash." This is a forgery," Nathaniel stammered, standing up. "I never signed this." "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Judge Prentice barked. "Your Honor, look at the signature," Sarah continued, relentless. "And look at the notary stamp. It was notarized by a Mr. Thomas Higgins, who incidentally is Mr. Sterling's personal golf partner." Nathaniel looked at the document again. His hands began to shake. He remembered the night. He remembered the whiskey. But he didn't remember signing this. How did she get it? Where had it come from? Audrey finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a thunderclap. "You told me it was a permission slip for our daughter's private school trip to Europe, Nate," Audrey said. "You were drunk. You handed me a stack of papers to file. You mixed them up." The courtroom erupted into whispers. Nathaniel looked at Audrey, really looked at her, for the first time in years. He didn't see the invisible housewife anymore. He saw the woman who had quietly, methodically, waited for him to hang himself. To understand the weight of that silence in the courtroom, you have to go back. You have to understand the architecture of the lie Nathaniel had built, and how Audrey had lived inside it for so long. 5 years earlier, the Sterlings were the golden couple of Seattle's Bellevue suburbs. They lived in a sprawling, modern, glass and steel home overlooking Lake Washington. Nathaniel was the CEO of Nebula Stream, a cloud computing firm that was chewing up competitors left and right. Audrey was the dutiful wife, the one who hosted the charity galas, managed the household staff, and raised their daughter, Lily. But the rot had set in long before the money did. It started with the late nights, the emergency meetings in San Francisco, the scent of perfume that wasn't hers, something floral and aggressive, like jasmine and ambition, clinging to his shirts when she did the laundry. Audrey wasn't naive, but she was hopeful. She wanted to believe the lies because the truth was too inconvenient, too painful to dismantle. Then came Sienna. Sienna Miller wasn't just a mistress, she was a prototype. Young, blonde, a Stanford graduate, and utterly ruthless. She was everything Nathaniel thought he deserved, now that he was a titan of industry. Audrey was the starter wife, the one who remembered him when he drove a beat-up Toyota and ate instant noodles. Sienna was the trophy for the finish line. The incident that shattered Audrey's denial happened on her 35th birthday. Nathaniel had called at 4 p.m. "Audrey, honey, I'm so sorry. The merger with the Japanese investors is going haywire. I'm stuck at the office. I can't make dinner." "It's okay," Audrey had said. staring at the table she had set with his favorite roast beef. "I understand. Business first." "You're the best. I'll make it up to you. Buy yourself something nice." He hung up. Audrey sat alone at the dining table, the candles burning down until they were just puddles of wax. Around 9 p.m., she decided to drive to his office to bring him some leftovers. He always forgot to eat when he was stressed. She drove her SUV through the rain, pulling into the underground garage of the Nebula Stream Tower. The security guard, old Mr. Henderson, waved her through. He knew her. Everyone knew Mrs. Sterling. She took the private elevator to the top floor. The office was dark, save for the ambient light from the city skyline, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She walked toward his corner office, the Tupperware container warm in her hands. The door was ajar. She heard laughter first. It was a low, throaty laugh. Sienna's. Then she heard Nathaniel. "God, she's so boring, Sienna. You have no idea. It's like living with a nun. I ask for a divorce. She cries about family values. I just need to get the IPO launched, secure the assets, and then I can cut her loose with the bare minimum." "Don't be too mean, Nate," Sienna cooed. "She raised your kid." "She's a glorified nanny," Nathaniel scoffed. The cruelty in his voice was casual, easy. "Once the Blackwood deal goes through, I'll move the liquid cash there. On paper, I'll be broke. She'll get the house, sure, but she won't get a dime of the real money. I'm not letting her take half of my genius." Audrey stood frozen in the hallway. The Tupperware container slipped from her numb fingers. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, the lid popping off. Roast beef and gravy spilled onto the pristine grey carpet. Inside the office, the laughter stopped. "What was that?" Sienna asked. Audrey didn't wait. She turned and ran. She ran back to the elevator, jamming the button, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She made it to the car before she vomited into a trash can near the parking pillars. Driving home, the tears didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard stone formed in her stomach. "She's a glorified nanny. I'm not letting her take half of my genius. He wasn't just cheating on her, he was planning to rob her. He was planning to leave her and Lily with nothing but a house they couldn't afford to maintain, while he ran off into the sunset with his billions and his new toy." That night, Audrey didn't sleep. She sat in the dark living room, watching the lights of the boats on the lake. She realized she had two choices. She could confront him now, scream and yell, and watch him lawyer up and destroy her. Or she could become exactly what he thought she was, the dumb, compliant, invisible wife. She chose the latter. If he wanted to play chess, she would learn the game. But she wouldn't play like a grandmaster. She would play like a ghost. The next morning, when Nathaniel came home, smelling of shower gel and guilt, Audrey was in the kitchen making pancakes. She smiled at him. "How was the merger?" she asked, pouring him coffee. Nathaniel looked at her, searching for any sign of suspicion. He saw only the tired, loving wife he had dismissed years ago. He relaxed. "Brutal, but we got it done. I'm proud of you," she said, and she leaned in to kiss his cheek. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. "Oh, by the way," Nathaniel said, loosening his tie, "I have a stack of documents on my desk in the study. Just standard tax stuff. Some transfers for Lily's trust fund. Could you sign them and file them for me? My secretary is out sick." Audrey's heart skipped a beat. This was how he did it. He buried his secrets in plain sight, relying on her laziness, her trust. "Of course, darling," she said. "I'll take care of it." That afternoon, Audrey entered his study. The stack of papers was immense. Non-disclosure agreements, tax filings, real estate transfers. Most wives would have just signed the sticky notes marked, "Sign here." Audrey sat down, put on her reading glasses, and began to read. Every single page. It took her 3 hours to find it. Buried between a landscaper's contract and a charitable donation form was a document titled Declaration of Trust. Blackwood Holdings. It was legal jargon, dense and boring, but Audrey had minored in business before switching to art history. She passed the sentences. Grantor, Nathaniel Sterling. Beneficiary, Nathaniel Sterling. Assets, 1400 Pine Street Commercial Complex. It was the smoking gun. It proved he owned the assets he planned to hide. But it wasn't signed. She stared at the blank signature line. If she confronted him with it, he would just shred it. She needed him to sign it, but he would never sign a confession knowingly. She looked at the other papers. There were permission slips for Lily's school, insurance forms, and meaningless bureaucratic filings. An idea formed. A dangerous, reckless idea. Nathaniel was a drinker. Specifically, he loved his expensive single malt scotch, and he loved it most when he was celebrating. Tonight, he would be celebrating the successful merger, his night with Sienna. Audrey went to the kitchen and prepared dinner. She opened a bottle of his favorite vintage, a 25-year-old Macallan. She waited. When he came home, she was the picture of the doting wife. She poured him a glass, then another, then another. She laughed at his jokes. She stroked his ego. By 10:15 p.m., Nathaniel was slurry and expansive, feeling like the king of the world. "Oh, Nate," she said casually, pulling a folder from the kitchen counter. "I almost forgot. That stack of papers? I signed my parts, but there were a few you missed. And the school needs this permission slip for Lily's trip to France, signed tonight, or she loses her spot." "Ugh, paperwork," Nathaniel groaned, waving a hand. "Bring it here." She placed the stack in front of him. She had shuffled the deck. Top page, permission slip. Second page, insurance form. Third page, the Declaration of Trust. Fourth page, another school form. She handed him a pen. "Just here, here, and here." Nathaniel, eyes glazed, laughed. "What would I do without you, Aud?" "You'd be lost, Nate," she whispered. He scribbled his signature on the permission slip. He flipped the page, signed the insurance form. He flipped the page. Audrey held her breath. The Declaration of Trust lay open. The title was right there at the top. If he looked up, if he focused his eyes for 1 second. "Is this for the... What is this?" he mumbled, squinting. "That's the liability waiver for the ski trip, I think," Audrey lied smoothly. "Or the trust transfer for her tuition." "Right. Tuition." He signed his name with a flourish. Nathaniel J. Sterling. He flipped the page. Audrey felt a rush of adrenaline so potent she almost fainted. He had done it. "All done," he said, pushing the papers away. "Now, come here." She let him hug her. She let him smell like the whiskey that had just cost him everything. The next day, she took the document to Thomas Higgins, their neighbor and a notary public. Thomas was a nice old man who trusted the Sterlings implicitly. "Nate signed this last night for the business, Tom," she said. "He forgot to get it stamped. Can you help me out? He's in meetings all day." "Technically, he should be here, Audrey," Tom said, adjusting his glasses. "I know, but he's flying to Tokyo tonight. You know his signature." Tom looked at the signature. It was unmistakably Nathaniel's drunk scrawl. "All right for you, Aud." He stamped it. Audrey took the document, drove to the bank, rented a safety deposit box in her name only, and locked the paper inside. She didn't file for divorce the next day. She didn't file the next month. She waited 3 years. She waited until Nebula Stream's stock peaked. She waited until the hidden account grew fat with diverted funds. She waited until he felt invincible. And now, here they were. Judge Prentice held the document up to the light, her eyes narrowing behind her spectacles. The silence in the courtroom had shifted texture. Before, it was the silence of a tomb. Now, it was the silence of a bomb squad, waiting to see if the red wire was the right one to cut. "Mr. Cole," Judge Prentice said, lowering the paper slowly, "this document appears to be in order. It bears your client's signature, a notary seal from a registered notary in King County, and it is dated 3 years ago. You claimed in your opening statement that Blackwood Holdings was a phantom entity invented by Mrs. Sterling to harass your client. Yet, here is your client's signature declaring himself the grantor and beneficiary of said entity." Harrison Cole was sweating. It was a fine sheen, visible only because the courtroom lights were unforgiving. He stood up, buttoning his jacket, a subconscious defensive maneuver. "Your Honor, my client does not recall signing this. As he stated, he may have been impaired, or perhaps this document was slipped into a stack of unrelated paperwork. We move to have it dismissed on the grounds of—" "On the grounds of what?" Sarah Jenkins interrupted, not waiting for the judge's permission. She stood tall, her cheap blazer looking like armor now. "Fraud? Are you suggesting Mr. Sterling committed fraud when he signed it? Or are you suggesting he was incompetent? Because if he was incompetent on the night of August 12th, 2022, then we have a problem." Sarah picked up a second piece of paper from her table. "On that same night, August 12th, Mr. Sterling also signed a board resolution for Nebula Stream, authorizing a Series B funding round worth $40 million. Are we to tell the SEC and his investors that he was impaired when he signed that too? Because if this signature is invalid due to intoxication, then that signature is invalid, and that would crash his company's stock before the market closes today." Nathaniel's head snapped toward Sarah. His eyes went wide. It was the trap Audrey had set 3 years ago, springing shut with the force of a bear trap. She had known he would sign the business documents that night too. She had inextricably linked his personal greed with his professional survival. If he claimed he was too drunk to sign the Blackwood Trust, he was admitting to gross negligence regarding his company. He would be sued by his board of directors. He would be removed as CEO. Nathaniel looked at his lawyer. Harrison Cole looked back, and for the first time, the attack dog looked toothless. He shook his head slightly. "We can't use the drunk defense." "We withdraw the objection regarding impairment," Cole mumbled, sitting down heavily. "Good," Judge Prentice said, her voice icy. "The document is admitted into evidence as Exhibit A. Now let's talk about the assets within Blackwood Holdings." Audrey watched Nathaniel. He was no longer looking at her. He was staring at the table, his knuckles white as he gripped a pen. He was doing the math. Blackwood held the commercial complex on Pine Street. He had bought that building for $20 million. It was now worth $35. It also held the liquid cash he had been siphoning off from Nebula Stream's profits under the guise of consulting fees paid to shell companies. Sarah continued, pacing in front of the bench. "Your Honor, this document proves that Mr. Sterling has committed perjury. He signed a financial affidavit 3 weeks ago, stating under oath that his total net worth was $6 million. The assets in Blackwood alone exceed $45 million. This isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is an attempt to defraud the court." "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, turning her gaze on him. It felt like a laser beam. "Stand up." Nathaniel stood, his legs feeling like jelly. "Your Honor, I can explain. My accountant handles the structures. I didn't realize Blackwood was considered a personal asset. I thought it was a corporate subsidiary." You are the CEO of a tech conglomerate, Mr. Sterling, the judge snapped. Do not play the fool with me. You signed a declaration of trust. That is a personal estate planning tool, not a corporate structure. You hid $50 million from this court and from your wife. It was for the business, Nathaniel blurted out, his voice cracking. It was a rainy day fund. The market is volatile. And yet, Sarah interjected, bank records show withdrawals from Blackwood used to purchase a penthouse in Miami, a Porsche 911 registered to a Ms. Sienna Miller, and, oh yes, a diamond necklace valued at $80,000. Audrey flinched slightly at the mention of the necklace. She remembered seeing the charge on a credit card statement he had quickly hidden. He had told her it was a server expense. A server expense. The judge slammed her gavel. It wasn't a loud bang, but it signaled the end of Nathaniel's control. I am ordering an immediate freeze on all assets held by Blackwood Holdings, Judge Prentice ruled. I am also ordering a forensic audit of Nebula Stream's finances to determine if shareholder funds were commingled with this private trust. And Mr. Sterling, I am holding you in contempt of court for the falsified affidavit. Bailiff, take Mr. Sterling into custody until his bail hearing tomorrow morning. The room gasped. This wasn't supposed to happen. Billionaire CEOs didn't go to jail in divorce hearings. They wrote checks and walked away. Your Honor, please! Harrison Cole shouted, jumping up. Incarceration is unnecessary. He is not a flight risk. He just proved he has $50 million hidden offshore and a propensity for lying to legal officials, the judge retorted. He is the definition of a flight risk. Take him away. The bailiff, a burly man who looked like he enjoyed his job, moved behind Nathaniel. Hands behind your back, sir. Nathaniel looked at Audrey. His eyes were wild, desperate. Audrey, stop this. Audrey, tell them. I'm the father of your child. You can't let them take me to jail. Audrey stood up slowly. She looked at the man who had called her a glorified nanny. She looked at the man who had smirked at her 10 minutes ago, thinking he had won. She didn't smile. She didn't smirk. That would have been beneath her. She simply looked at him with a profound, terrifying indifference. I'm sorry, Nate, she said, her voice steady. I'd help you, but I seem to be just a naive housewife. I wouldn't understand the legal complexities. The bailiff clicked the handcuffs onto Nathaniel's wrists. The cold metallic sound echoed off the wood paneling. As they led him out the side door, Nathaniel Sterling, the boy wonder of the tech world, began to weep. The news hit the internet before Audrey even made it to the parking lot. TMZ'd. Tech mogul cuffed in court. Wife reveals secret 50-minute stash. Wall Street Journal. Nebula Stream stock plummets. 14% after CEO arrested for perjury. Audrey sat in her car, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She didn't turn the engine on. She just breathed. In and out. For 12 years she had been holding her breath, walking on eggshells, trying to be the perfect, frictionless wife. Now the friction was gone, but the adrenaline left her shaking. Her phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. A constant, angry vibration against the center console. She looked at the screen. Harrison Cole calling. Unknown number calling. Sienna Miller calling. She stared at that last name. Sienna. The woman who had laughed at her in the office that night. The woman who was currently driving a Porsche bought with Audrey's daughter's inheritance. Audrey picked up the phone. She swiped accept. Hello, Sienna, Audrey said. You bitch, Sienna's voice hissed on the other end. She sounded frantic. There was background noise, sirens, shouting. What did you do? The FBI is at the office. They're seizing the servers. They're asking about the car. It's not your car, Sienna, Audrey said calmly. It belongs to Blackwood Holdings, which means it's currently frozen by the state of Washington. I'd suggest you don't try to drive it, or hide it. That would be obstruction of justice. I didn't know, Sienna screamed. He told me he bought it. He told me the divorce was done. You ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything, Audrey replied. I just turned on the lights. The cockroaches did the rest. She hung up and blocked the number. Audrey started the car and drove. She didn't go home. She went to the one place she knew Nathaniel would never look for her, even if he made bail. She drove to a small diner in West Seattle, the Rusty Spoon. It was a dive, sticky tables, burnt coffee, and the best cherry pie in the state. It was where her father used to take her before he died. She sat in a booth in the back, ordered a coffee, and finally allowed herself to cry. Not out of sadness for Nathaniel, but out of grief for the time she had lost. The years of gaslighting, the years of thinking she was the problem. Half an hour later, Sarah Jenkins slid into the booth opposite her. Sarah looked exhausted, but electrified. She slapped a newspaper on the table. "You're a legend, Audrey," Sarah said, flagging down the waitress. "I've had 3 other lawyers call me, asking if you're hiring for a consulting firm. They want to know how you found the trust." "I didn't find it," Audrey said, wiping her eyes. "He gave it to me. He was just too arrogant to realize it." "Well, the fallout is nuclear," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "Nathaniel made bail about an hour ago. Cost him a fortune. But he's not out of the woods. The board of directors at Nebula Stream is holding an emergency meeting tonight. They're going to oust him. The stock is in free fall. They need a scapegoat, and Nathaniel just volunteered." "What about the divorce settlement?" Audrey asked. "Does this mean there's no money left?" Sarah smiled, a genuine warm smile. "On the contrary. Because the judge froze the assets immediately, Blackwood is locked down. Nathaniel can't touch it to pay his legal fees or his debts. And because we proved he tried to hide it, under Washington state law, the judge has the discretion to award 100% of the hidden asset to the innocent spouse as a penalty." Audrey stared at her coffee. "So, I get Blackwood. You get the building, you get the cash, you get the Porsche," Sarah chuckled, "though I imagine you'll want to sell that." "Burn it," Audrey muttered. "I want to burn it." "Here's the kicker," Sarah continued. "Nathaniel is terrified. Harrison Cole called me 5 minutes ago. They want to settle. Tonight. No more court. No more discovery. They want to give you everything you asked for, plus Blackwood, if you agree to seal the record and stop cooperating with the SEC investigation regarding the company funds." Audrey stirred her coffee. It was a tempting offer. Take the money. Walk away. Be rich and free. But then she remembered the smirk. She remembered the way he had looked at her, like she was furniture. And she realized that if she settled now, if she helped him cover up the fraud at his company, he would survive. He would rebuild. He would find another Sienna, another Audrey. He would do it again. "No," Audrey said. Sarah blinked. "No? Audrey, it's $50 million, plus the house. You'd be set for life." "I don't want his hush money," Audrey said, her voice hardening. "He broke the law, Sarah. He stole from his investors to hide money from his family. If I seal the record, I'm an accomplice. I'm just helping him build the next lie." "If we go to trial on the fraud," Sarah warned, "it will get ugly. He will attack you. He will claim you knew about the schemes. He will try to drag your name through the mud to save his own skin." "Let him try," Audrey said. "I have one more document." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're joking. There's more." "I told you I read everything that night," Audrey said. "The Declaration of Trust was the big one. But there was something else in that stack. something he signed, thinking it was a health insurance renewal. Audrey reached into her purse and pulled out a photocopy of a handwritten letter. "What is this?" Sarah asked, squinting at the scrawl. "It's a letter to the IRS," Audrey said, "begging for amnesty. He drafted it 3 years ago when he thought he was going to get caught during an audit. He admits to underreporting income by 40% for 5 years running. He never sent it because the audit got cancelled. But he signed it." Sarah stared at the paper. "Audrey, this is a confession to federal tax evasion. He signed it because I put it under a document titled HIPAA Release Form and clipped the bottom off so he only saw the signature line," Audrey explained. "I kept it as an insurance policy. If he tries to say I was complicit, I release this. It proves he knew he was guilty, and I was the one he was hiding it from." Sarah leaned back, looking at Audrey with a mixture of fear and awe. "Remind me never to cross you, Mrs. Sterling." "I'm not Mrs. Sterling anymore," Audrey said, standing up. "My maiden name is Vance, and I'm ready to finish this." Nathaniel Sterling sat in the expansive living room of the house he was about to lose, nursing a glass of scotch. The bottle was almost empty. The house was dark. The staff had left hours ago, sensing the impending doom like animals sensing an earthquake. He was out on bail, but he felt like a prisoner. His phone had been ringing non-stop until he threw it into the swimming pool. The front door opened. Nathaniel looked up, expecting Harrison Cole. Instead, he saw Audrey. She walked in, still wearing the simple cream suit she had worn to court. She looked out of place in the dark, messy room. She looked clean. "Get out," Nathaniel slurred. "This is still my house." "Not for long," Audrey said, walking into the room but keeping her distance. "Sarah tells me you want to settle." "I'm offering you everything," Nathaniel shouted, standing up and swaying. "Take the money. Take the damn building. Just tell the DA that you made a mistake about the documents. Tell them I was drunk and you manipulated me. If you do that, the fraud charges might drop to misdemeanors. I can salvage the company." "I can't do that, Nate," Audrey said. "Why not?" he screamed, throwing the glass against the fireplace. It shattered, shards of crystal raining down on the hearth. "Why are you doing this to me? I gave you a life of luxury. I gave you everything." "You gave me a cage," Audrey said quietly, "and you didn't give it to me. I managed it for you. I raised your daughter. I organized your life, and you treated me like an employee you couldn't wait to fire." "Is this about Sienna?" Nathaniel sneered. "Because that's over. She bailed on me the second the news dropped. She's a gold digger, Audrey. You were loyal." "I was," Audrey agreed, "until I realized my loyalty was your weapon against me." "I can destroy you." Nathaniel lowered his voice, his eyes narrowing. "Harrison has files on you. Your depression after Lily was born. The therapy sessions. We can paint you as unstable, vindictive, a scorned woman making up stories." "Go ahead," Audrey said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the photocopy of the IRS letter. She placed it on the coffee table. Nathaniel squinted at it. He picked it up. As he read, the color drained from his face, leaving him ghostly pale. "You kept this?" he whispered. "I thought I shredded this." "You shredded the draft," Audrey said. "I kept the signed original." Nathaniel collapsed onto the sofa. He held his head in his hands. This was the nail in the coffin. The trust was state crime. This was federal. This was prison time. Real prison time. Not white-collar resort prison. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice broken. "I want you to resign from Nebula Stream," Audrey said. "Tonight, before the board fires you. I want you to plead guilty to the tax charges, so Lily doesn't have to see her father dragged through a year-long trial. And I want full custody. You can have supervised visits." "Full custody?" Nathaniel looked up. "She's my daughter. She's a prop to you, Nate. You missed her birthday 3 years in a row. You don't even know the name of her math teacher." Nathaniel stayed silent. He knew she was right. He knew he had lost. "If I do this..." Nathaniel hesitated. "If I plead guilty, will you visit me?" Audrey looked at him. She saw the pathetic, broken man beneath the expensive suit. For a moment, she felt pity. But then she remembered the smirk. "No, Nate," she said, turning to leave. "I won't. But I'll make sure Lily sends you a card on your birthday." She walked to the door. "Audrey," he called out. She paused, her hand on the latch. "How long?" he asked. "How long were you planning to this?" Audrey looked back over her shoulder. The moonlight caught her face, illuminating a strength he had never bothered to notice. "Since the moment you laughed at me in your office," she said. "Since the moment you called me a glorified nanny, you underestimated me, Nathaniel. That was your only crime. The rest was just details." She opened the door and walked out into the cool night air. The driveway was empty, save for her car. She got in, started the engine, and didn't look back at the mansion on the hill. The months leading up to the sentencing were a blur of media frenzies, subpoenas, and the slow, agonizing dismantling of Nathaniel Sterling's empire. The plea deal had been signed, a document as heavy with consequence as the Declaration of Trust had been with deceit. Nathaniel had agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of tax evasion and 1 count of securities fraud. In exchange, the district attorney, a sharp-jawed man named Robert Daines, agreed not to pursue charges against the wider executive team of Nebula Stream, effectively saving the company from total dissolution, though its reputation was in tatters. But for Audrey, the real drama wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the transformation of the people around her. Sienna Miller was the first domino to fall publicly. Without Nathaniel's protection, and with her assets frozen, the shark of Silicon Valley was reduced to a minnow in a dried-up pond. She attempted to sue Audrey for emotional distress and defamation regarding the seizure of the Porsche. The confrontation happened in the hallway of the King County Courthouse, 2 weeks before Nathaniel's sentencing. Sienna looked haggard. Her designer clothes were the same, but they hung loosely on her frame. She marched up to Audrey, who was speaking quietly with Sarah Jenkins. "You think you've won, don't you?" Sienna spat, her voice shrill enough to turn heads. "You think destroying Nate makes you a hero? You're just a bitter old woman who couldn't keep her husband interested." Audrey turned slowly. She didn't look angry. She looked at Sienna with the clinical detachment of a scientist examining a specimen. "I didn't destroy Nate, Sienna," Audrey replied, her voice calm and level. "Greed destroyed Nate. I just provided the receipt." "I'm going to sue you for every penny you take from him," Sienna threatened, though her hands were shaking. "That car was a gift." "Actually," Sarah Jenkins interjected, stepping forward, "that car was purchased with funds from Blackwood Holdings. Since Audrey is now the sole legal owner of Blackwood per the divorce settlement signed yesterday, you have been driving stolen property. We were going to let it slide if you returned the keys quietly. But if you'd prefer, we can file a police report for grand theft auto right now. It's a felony, Ms. Miller. I believe it carries a sentence of up to 5 years. Sienna's mouth opened, then closed. The fight drained out of her instantly. She dug into her purse, pulled out the key fob, and threw it on the floor. "I hope you rot," Sienna whispered, before turning and fleeing down the corridor, the click-clack of her heels sounding like a retreat. Audrey watched her go. "She's not the villain, Sarah. She's just a symptom." The day of the sentencing, November 3rd, was cold and rainy. Typical Seattle weather. The courtroom was packed. Investors, reporters, former employees. Everyone wanted to see the tech mogul fall. Nathaniel entered wearing a plain grey suit. He had lost 20 pounds. His hair, once perfectly coiffed, was thinning and grey at the temples. He didn't look at the gallery. He didn't look at the press. He looked only at the table in front of him. When Judge Prentice asked if he had anything to say, Nathaniel stood up. He turned, finally, to look at Audrey in the front row. "I built Nebula Stream from nothing," he rasped, his voice hollow. I thought I was the one who mattered. I thought the people around me were just supporting characters in my story. I was wrong." He paused, his eyes watering. "I lost the only person who actually knew me before the money, and for that I deserve whatever happens next." It was a good speech. It was rehearsed, certainly. Harrison Cole had likely written it. But there was a kernel of truth in the delivery. Judge Prentice was unmoved. "Mr. Sterling, you defrauded the United States government. You defrauded your shareholders. You attempted to defraud this court. You lived a life of opulence on stolen money while planning to leave your wife and child with a pittance. That is not a mistake. That is a character flaw. I sentence you to 48 months in a federal correctional institution, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $12 million. The gavel banged. It was final. As the marshals led him away, Nathaniel didn't fight. He didn't beg. He just walked, his head bowed into the shadows. Audrey felt a hand on her arm. It was Sarah. "It's over, Audrey. You're free." Audrey nodded, but her mind was already racing. It wasn't over. Nathaniel was gone, yes. But he had left behind a mess. Nebula Stream was leaderless. The stock was trading at pennies. And technically, through the asset seizure of Blackwood Holdings, Audrey now owned the commercial building that served as Nebula Stream's headquarters. She wasn't just his ex-wife. She was his landlord, and she was about to call in the rent. 3 months later, the boardroom of Nebula Stream smelled of fear and stale donuts. The remaining board of directors sat around the mahogany table, looking like captains of a sinking ship. There was Preston Calloway, the chairman, a man who had made his fortune in oil and didn't understand cloud computing. There was Linda Graves, a venture capitalist who was currently trying to distance herself from the scandal. And there was the interim CEO, a nervous man named Greg, who had been the CTO. "We have to file for Chapter 11, Preston said, rubbing his temples. "The lease on this building is up for renegotiation. The new owner of Blackwood, Mrs. Sterling, is going to evict us. We can't afford the market rate. We have no cash flow." "We can't liquidate," Greg argued. "The underlying tech is solid. If we just had time to rebuild trust—" "We don't have time," Linda snapped. "The stock is at $2. We're going to be delisted. We need a miracle." The double doors at the end of the room swung open. Audrey walked in. She wasn't wearing the soft pastels of a housewife anymore. She wore a sharp, tailored black suit that cost more than Greg's car. Her hair was cut into a sleek bob. She carried a leather portfolio. Behind her walked Sarah Jenkins, and a young man named David, a forensic accountant she had hired. "Gentlemen," "Linda," Audrey said, taking the seat at the head of the table, Nathaniel's old seat. "Mrs. Sterling," Preston stood up, flustered. "We weren't expecting you. If this is about the eviction notice—" "Sit down, Preston," Audrey said, coolly. Preston sat. "I'm not here to evict you," Audrey said, placing her portfolio on the table. "I'm here to make you an offer." "An offer?" Linda scoffed. "With all due respect, Audrey, you're an art history major. You don't know the first thing about running a tech company. You got the building in the divorce. Congratulations. Just tell us the rent so we can tell you we can't pay it. Audrey smiled. It was a small, dangerous smile. You think I don't know this company? I lived in this company, Linda. When Nathaniel was working late in the early days, who do you think was proofreading the code documentation? Who do you think designed the user interface for the original Nebula dashboard? The room went silent. Nathaniel was a visionary, sure, Audrey continued. He was great at selling things, but he was terrible at details, the structural efficiency algorithm that gave Nebula Stream its edge, the one that reduced server latency by 40%. That was Nate's breakthrough, Greg said defensively. He won an award for it. He won an award for presenting it, Audrey corrected. I wrote the logic flow on a napkin at a diner in 2012 while he was complaining about bandwidth costs. He took the napkin, gave it to the engineers, and claimed it came to him in a dream. She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of an old notebook page dated 2012. The handwriting was unmistakably Audrey's. It outlined the exact logic tree that was the foundation of the company's success. Greg picked it up, his mouth dropping open. This is the source node protocol. Yes, it is, Audrey said. I didn't mind him taking the credit. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted our family to succeed. But now I'm taking back what's mine. What do you want? Preston asked, his voice shaking. I own the building, Audrey said. I own the intellectual property rights to the core algorithm, which I can prove in court with my original notebooks. And I have $50 million in liquid capital sitting in Blackwood Holdings. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. I am proposing a hostile takeover. I will inject $40 million into Nebula Stream to stabilize the stock and pay off the debts. In exchange, I want a 51% controlling interest in the company, and I want the position of CEO. You, Linda laughed nervously. The market will never accept it. The scorned wife taking over? It's a PR nightmare. On the contrary, Audrey said, the narrative isn't scorned wife. The narrative is the brains behind the operation finally steps out of the shadows. The market loves a redemption arc, Linda, and they love stability. I'm the only one who can save this ship because I'm the one who built the engine. The board members looked at each other. They had no choice. They were bankrupt without her capital and homeless without her building. All those in favor? Preston asked weakly. Every hand went up. 6 months later. Audrey stood in the CEO's office, her office. The decor had changed. The cold chrome and black leather were gone, replaced by warm wood, modern art, and light. On the desk sat a framed photo of her daughter, Lily, who was now attending a boarding school in Switzerland, far away from the scandal. Lily was happy, thriving, and they FaceTimed every night. There was a knock on the door. Come in, Audrey said. It was her assistant, a bright young woman named Chloe. Ms. Sterling, there's a visitor for you in the lobby. He says he's an old friend. Who is it? He didn't give a name. He just said he used to play chess with you. Audrey paused. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the bustling city of Seattle. She knew who it was. Not Nathaniel. He was 6 months into his 4-year sentence at FCI Sheridan. Send him up, Audrey said. A few minutes later, the door opened. A man walked in. He was tall, wearing a worn leather jacket and jeans. He had graying hair and kind eyes. It was Thomas Higgins, the notary, the man who had stamped the Declaration of Trust all those years ago. Thomas, Audrey smiled warmly, walking over to shake his hand. I haven't seen you since the trial. I've been keeping a low profile, Thomas chuckled. Retirement treats me well. But I saw the news. Nebula Stream stock is up 200% since you took over. They're calling you the Iron Lady of Tech. They call me a lot of things, Audrey said, but I prefer Audrey. Thomas looked around the office. You know that night, when you brought me the document, I knew. Audrey froze. You knew what? I knew Nate hadn't signed it knowingly, Thomas said softly. I've known Nate for 20 years. He never would have signed away his safety net. And I knew you. I knew you were too smart to just be running errands. Then why did you stamp it? Audrey asked, her voice barely a whisper. You could have lost your license. You could have gone to jail. Thomas shrugged. I played golf with Nate every Sunday. He cheated, Audrey. Every single game. He kicked the ball out of the rough. He miscounted his strokes. He thought I didn't see it because I was old. But I saw it. He looked at her with a sparkle in his eye. I knew he was cheating on you too. I saw him with that girl at the club. And I saw how you kept your head high, how you raised that little girl while he was out playing big shot. So, when you came to me with that paper, I decided it was time for the cheater to pay a penalty stroke. Audrey felt tears prick her eyes. She had thought she was alone in her scheme. She had thought she was the only player on the board. Thank you, Thomas, she said. Don't thank me, Thomas said, turning to the door. You played the game, Audrey. You just needed someone to verify the scorecard. He paused at the door. Oh, and Audrey? Nate sent me a letter from prison. He wants to know if you'll visit. Audrey looked at her desk. She looked at the quarterly reports showing record profits. She looked at the photo of her smiling daughter. She looked at the life she had built from the ashes of his arson. Tell him I'm busy, Audrey said. I have a company to run. Thomas smiled, tipped an imaginary hat, and walked out. Audrey turned back to the window. The sun was setting over the Puget Sound, painting the water in gold and violet. She wasn't the wife in the shadows anymore. She wasn't the victim. She was the grandmaster. And the game was finally won. The fall of Nathaniel Sterling serves as a stark reminder that arrogance is the architect of its own destruction. He believed his wife was a fixture in his house, unaware that she was the foundation of his entire world. By underestimating Audrey, he didn't just lose his fortune, he lost his freedom, his reputation, and the love of his child. Audrey's journey from a silent observer to a titan of industry proves that true power doesn't roar. It waits, it plans, and when the time is right, it strikes with the precision of a signed confession. In the end, the smirk was wiped away, not by anger, but by the cold, hard ink of the truth. Wow, what a journey. From the courtroom betrayal to the boardroom takeover, Audrey really showed that you should never underestimate the quiet ones. I absolutely loved that twist with the notary at the end. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story of karmic justice and sweet revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done in Audrey's shoes? Would you have visited Nate in prison, or did she make the right call? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.